What do Donald Trump, Joseph Biden, and Benjamin Netanyahu have in common? Answer: at least one child who gives them sleepless nights. And they are not alone. I always think back to the story of Gerald and Betty Ford while they were living in the White House. And one night they were hosting a state dinner for Queen Elizabeth. The upstairs living quarters in the White House were in an uproar, and everyone was getting dressed in anticipation of the arrival of the Queen. And Jack Ford, their son, could not find the cufflinks for his tuxedo. He was running around without a shirt and pants, and the announcement came that the Queen was being ushered upstairs to be greeted in the family quarters. And out she came from the elevator. And from another door came Jack Ford in his underwear. Betty Ford, terribly embarrassed, began to apologize when the Queen cut in and said, "Don't bother. I've got one like that too." Yes, ones like that have been around for a long time now. And they don't have to be the children of presidents or queens. The question then is, what should we do when our children disappoint us? What should we do when our children reject our values? What should we do when our children approve of things that we disapprove of? Maybe we can find a lesson from Bezalel and his family. Our Torah portion this week continues once again with a description of the building of the sanctuary in the wilderness and the ritual items to be used as part of the worship service. And we're told once again that everything was made under the guidance of a man whose name was Bezalel. What's interesting is that when the Torah tells us of this man, Bezalel, it usually adds Ben Uri, Ben Hur. That Bezalel was the son of Uri, who was the son of Hur. And Rashi, quoting a midrash, says that the reason for always including Bezalel's grandfather as being part of his lineage was in tribute to Hur, who gave his life protesting when the Jewish people attempted to build a golden calf. The Medrash goes on to say that God swore to Hur that because of his devotion, his descendants would be prominent members of the Jewish people. That was Bezalel's grandfather, Hur. What of Hur's son, Bezalel's father, Uri? Who was he? We don't know. The Torah never tells us anything about him. But God had promised Hur that his descendants would be great people, and his grandson, Bezalel, was. But what about his son, Uri? Rabbi Yisachar Friend, the outstanding teacher and speaker from Ner Israel, points out that even when God promises nachas for our descendants, the promise might not be fulfilled in a single generation. It might take 2 generations. It might take 4 generations. As great as Hur was, he was not blessed with a great son. That's life. Fortunately, he got his reward in having a great grandson. But there are no guarantees. That's life. Sure, we've got to give it our best. We've got to give it our all. We have to do everything possible to set an example for our children that they should follow in the derech hayashar, the proper path. But ultimately, what they decide to do is going to be their decision, not ours. I can prove it to you. My dear friend, Rabbi Jack Rima, once pointed out to me, Leon Trotsky, the vicious anti-Semite and anti-Zionist, later on had a great-grandson who lived in a settlement on the West Bank of Israel and named his children after Maya Kahana. Menachem Begin, the right-wing prime minister, has a grandson who wrote a book that begins with the words, Judaism is violence, Zionism is violence, and they are roadblocks to peace. Theodor Herzl and Teddy Kollek and Moshe Ahrens and Yosef Berg and so many others, their children went off the path, and there's not much they could do about it. Here, try this one. The founder of the Chabad way of life, the Baal HaTanya, had a young son named Moshe. You know what happened to that little Moshe? He converted to Christianity. And it's safe to assume that he did this despite the fact that he grew up in a nice Jewish home. So, what should we do when a child of ours does not turn out to be the way we hope? Maybe we can learn from the approach of Ehud Olmert. Ehud Olmert, the former prime minister of Israel, had one daughter who was a leftist, the other an outspoken lesbian who stands near checkpoints to interfere with the work of Israeli soldiers. He has a son who is a deserter from the Israel Defense Forces and a son who never served and went and lived in Paris. And his wife was a member of Women in Black, a group that habitually sides with Arabs against Jews. Little wonder that it's well known that the Olmert family table is filled with arguments. And yet the family maintained its unity. Asked to explain how that was, Olmert said, "What's the big deal? They're entitled to have their own opinions. I never questioned their right to be wrong." There's a case to be made that this reaction is a bit extreme. Not everything our children do is acceptable or should be accepted. But our children are our children. And we have to do everything possible to keep it that way. There's no question that when our children or grandchildren go a different way than we want them to, it hurts more than you can say in words. But Hur didn't give up on his son Uri. And look, he ended up getting for himself a Betzalel, who was a true gift to the Jewish people. When it comes to children, based on my own experience, my philosophy in life has been that their goal in life is to try and kill us. But if we don't let them pull it off and we live long enough, we usually get to see some nachas. I know that that's how it's worked out for me and my children. And I hope it will be for you and yours as well. Shabbat Shalom.